Hey everyone, thanks for coming to The Intelligent Marketer. For our third episode today, we had Dmitry Shevelenko from Perplexity, the Chief Business Officer, on. We came into this conversation with a set of questions that were more merchant and marketer focused around what the future of commerce and marketing looks like on these answer engines, with Perplexity in particular. And I would say we came out with a set of kind of unexpected insights on consumer surplus and really their vision of commerce in a consumer-oriented way. And I think it ended up getting in a really interesting territory that was kind of different than expected.
Yeah, I'm excited for you all to hear what he has to say about the various ways in which Perplexity thinks about creating surplus for the consumer and making sure that commerce is extremely high trust in a world where there are ants and engines not only helping you answer questions and helping you make those critical decisions, but also when a browser is agentic, what does that mean for how shopping evolves over time? And for both the marketer and for the consumer, how does that play out in terms of the information sharing and the trust building that happens throughout the shopping journey? So I'm sure you all are going to enjoy this one.
Hey everyone, welcome back to The Intelligent Marketer. Today we are talking with Dmitry Shevelenko, the Chief Business Officer at Perplexity. It's been a big couple of weeks, new announcements for them with launching Comet, their new browser last week, and a bunch of stuff that we're excited to dig into around marketing and commerce. Maybe before jumping in, Dmitry, do you want to do a quick intro of yourself and your role at Perplexity?
Hey, Mike and Rob, thanks so much for having me on. So I'm Dmitry, Chief Business Officer at Perplexity. I oversee our external-facing functions. So this ranges from partnerships, comms, marketing, corp dev, fundraising efforts, as well as our vertical initiatives around commerce, advertising, our enterprise component of Perplexity. So every day is varied and exciting, and as I'm sure we are all feeling when we touch AI, every day feels like a month. So excited to dive in on all of it with you.
Yeah, sweet. Well, for this conversation, we could assume a pretty advanced audience who's already deeply aware of what Perplexity is and kind of some of the stuff you're cooking up. We wanted to really go deep on efforts around commerce and kind of your perspective on agentic commerce and some stuff around kind of the role of Perplexity in the modern marketing stack and as well as the advertising ecosystem. And so maybe to start, let's spend some time on the agentic commerce and kind of checkout work that you all have underway. Obviously, this week there's been some big announcements between OpenAI and Shopify. Perplexity's had its shopping feature live for some time now. So maybe the right place to start, like high level, talk to us about what your perspective is on commerce and shopping, and then we'll get into some specifics underneath that.
Yeah. So actually, before going into that, this is probably your one of the first ever podcasts recorded using the Comet browser. So I'm in Comet right now. So if it is so that's a world first here.
Dimitri, can I ask a follow-up question? Is this the real Dimitri, or did you just
Yeah, it says
train
Dmitry
train?
AI. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, okay. All right, we got it.
But I am using my Comet assistant to kind of basically give me the answers, so all the hard questions. So there's contextual assistance happening. And so when we think about commerce, the starting point is, our purpose is to answer people's questions, and we really want to be the product that people use when they have to make an important decision. Uh, and so when it's a higher consideration purchase, the ones where you want to do more research, where you want to be more informed, make sure you're getting the thing that matters, the best of it, that's our focus area. Everything we talk about in terms of like checkout and that piece of it, it's all much less important than answer quality. And so I think like the having the seamless checkout, it's a reason for people to maybe want to try Perplexity because they hear about it and it kind of seems new. But ultimately, if you're not going to get an amazing answer, it doesn't matter how great and kind of seamless the flow is from there, right? And so I think a great answer, you know you need to have good sourcing, right? And that's why Perplexity is, always invested in building our own search infrastructure and index and ranking and retrieval. You have really good UI UX so that you're kind of presenting the information with the depending on the query type, emphasizing the most useful components. And so that's really like where we spend the bulk of our time right now. And if you get that liquidity of people coming to you when they have to make important decisions, that's what gives you the leverage to then do exciting things downstream.
What are the types of things that you think about in terms of the rails to getting the information that a consumer needs to make the purchase decision outside, like you said, outside of the actual nominal checkout flow? There's a wide variety of things that people do before they make a purchase decision, right? And so how do you think about making sure that, and outside of citations as well, how do you make sure you present that in a way in which someone feels like they are getting all the information they need to make a purchase? Just like, let's just say a home gym, for example, right? There's like lots of considerations around the types of things you would need to know before you make decisions on what you can purchase and whether it'll fit in your space and so on and so forth. How do you think about the different formats of information that someone actually needs to be presented with, and what all you're retrieving outside of what a standard consumer might be thinking about?
I mean, the system is very dynamic, so it's not like we don't really hard code any of this. And in general, when you're working in a world of LLMs, you have to have an affordance for the fact that the output is going to be probabilistic, not deterministic, right? A slightly unnerving aspect of using any AI product is you'll ask the exact same question 5 times and get 5 slightly different answers, every time, right? And so that when you're kind of designing the interface, you need to allow for that and kind of anticipate that's going to be part of the flow. A really important part of how like we try not to give very long answers, and instead we try to anticipate what the next question might be, right? So one of the most popular parts of Perplexity are the related follow-up questions, and that's where we're really uh, trying to properly anticipate the user's intention and nudge them to give us the information that we truly need to give them that final answer that can be actionable. And again, sometimes people want like everything, and that's when we have the deep research mode, right, where you just basically get a full report. But most people want that sort of iterative, uh, they use the follow-up questions, they kind of prompt it themselves, and you kind of go, 4 or 5 follow-ups deep to get to that point where you have confidence that you've arrived at the right place. Now, why we're so excited about Comet is we now have a much richer set of sources to pull from, which is not just your, what's in our public index and maybe like your past chats. We get to see your browser history. We get to pull in information from logged in sites, right? So like we can see your Amazon transaction history. So all of that, everything that lives inside of your tabs can be used to give you a more personalized, relevant answer. And personalization is a double-edged sword in that Google's been around for many decades, and they still, outside of location, they pretty much never personalize the ranking of the links you get. And that's because the balance of personalization is with the trustworthiness and accuracy of the answer, right? And people don't want to feel they're being manipulated. And so, trustworthiness ends up, I think, being kind of the most scarce asset and resource as AIs become more powerful, and we think a lot about that.
Yes, I want to spend more time on the browser in a sec. Maybe before that, like there's different flavors of conversion that happen on Perplexity, right? Like if obviously a lot of kind of the top of funnel discovery is happening on these engines right now, and it seems that you're trying to play a role deeper and deeper and deeper in the funnel, all the way through to kind of end transaction. What ingredients need to kind of fall into place before a user is willing to finish the purchase right where they ask the question, right? And I guess like how do you guys think about building the right rails to ensure that that happens there?
And so I think it's important to clarify that our goal is not to like on the end-to-end experience. Like the metric we're optimizing for is not full end-to-end commerce experiences inside of Perplexity. The metric we're optimizing for is more important decisions. You begin your research journey on Perplexity, right? We want to that's and so you know to me the happy path the metric I look for is like someone who's been exposed to the end-to-end commerce experience. Are they more likely to ask more shopping related queries in Perplexity the next 2 months versus a user that was not exposed to that, right? So that's like the A/B test, if you will, that shows us if we're on the right track. And because I think there's people are different, people are weird when it comes to their shopping. Like a lot of people just don't. It's kind of. Uh, I often tell the story of like me versus my wife. Like, you know, I'm a very simple shopper of like, okay, I have a problem. I want to find the best solution to it and I want to get it as fast as possible. And I don't want to like I want to like move it off my list. Uh, my wife, on the other hand, she like loves the process of like going down the rabbit hole of like every possible variant, checking every site, double checking. And like for her, that's like it's an enjoyable process. And I think there's all kinds of people in between that spectrum. And so I don't think we're trying to like pigeonhole people down a specific path. We just want them to start that initial framing of like, okay, what are what are the products considerations that would be relevant to this purchase? We want to start that journey. I don't know if you guys saw our release of Pro Perks. So if you're Perplexity has a Pro subscription, it's $20 a month, $200 a year. And if you're a Pro subscriber, you now get exclusive offers and discounts that come with it, right? And so I think of it a lot akin to like a Costco for the internet. And what we're able to do is if you are a free user of Perplexity, and for example, say you're researching hotels, we now have a native hotel booking option. And you will see that before you're about to book, you see, hey, if you upgrade to Pro, you'll save 10% on the booking. And, most hotel, bookings are more than $200. So just that one kind of opportunity alone is a reason to upgrade to Perplexity Pro, right? And so where we see the agentic world going is that display and performance ads like AdWords will be less relevant, and what people will react to and their personal shopping agent will react to is again personalized offers, discounts, and exclusives. And we want to start building that groundwork, right? And effectively, like the economic shift is instead of us capturing the customer acquisition budget that a brand or merchant has, we want to transfer that full value to the user, right? So we're taking that OTA commission, and instead of us keeping it, we're giving it to the user, and we're capturing the value through increased subscription acquisition retention for Pro. And I think that's kind of I say that because I think that will then inform like why we build the product the way we do. Is we're trying to be fundamentally aligned with our users. We don't want a user to ever think we're changing an answer and manipulating them and saying, hey, this is better because we're getting some kickback on this, right? Like we're always bringing them best in class offers and discounts, but we're not, ourselves taking a cut of the action.
Yeah, so this actually let's stay in the business model here for a sec. So this is actually very illuminating that, and I think very well said that you're trying to transfer a lot of the value that might otherwise be realized in ads to the subscription. I think, and you kind of framed maybe a contrast between, end user value and engagement and like monetization to partners on the platform. Is there a world where you could kind of have your cake and eat it too there? Like, I think one of the things that Rishabh and I have talked about that seems interesting from these new answer engines is you have such interesting like semantic context where perhaps there is a way to actually build ads in a way that enhance the user experience. And maybe you can have your cake and eat it too. Do you guys think about these types? I mean, I know you have launched ads in a very small capacity. Like, is that not the path you're going to go down, or how do you think about that? Does it need to be a trade-off?
I think the thing that you cannot compromise on is user trust. And I think, even doing some very innocent experiments with this, like you can kind of permanently tarnish the perception that you're kind of juking the stats. Because like, you know, an answer that you get from an AI is so authoritative, right? And that the second people start questioning the biases of that, that go into that authoritative answer, you're kind of you're going backwards. There's just so much value to create with kind of the model I described of like, offers and discounts, exclusives, focus on scaling subscription revenue. And, once you're in that position where like people like have had enough experience, they know that the answers aren't being manipulated, then you can start, doing other types of experiments, with the right disclosures. I still think also there's going to be a big opportunity for, top of funnel considerate like our the ad product you mentioned was sponsored follow-up questions where we're not touching the answer or anything around the answer, but in that list of follow-up questions we let a brand insert the question that they want you to ask. And by the way, the answer to that, it doesn't take you out of Perplexity. It's just a Perplexity answer to that question, which the brand also cannot edit or manipulate, right? So we kind of
Right.
preserved full integrity and fidelity. And an interesting learning is we launched that. And again, this is like, I think, I could not have imagined a more user-centric like ad product. But we literally like, what is the thing we can do that like no one can feel we're trying to manipulate them? Like it is like the answer doesn't change. It's just the sponsored follow-up question. And we still got completely, blown up on Reddit for like, oh, Perplexity selling out, right? And like, ads and like, game over. And so I think that was, well, the criticism was ungrounded, unfair. I think it informs that like the average consumer, like they're not in the weeds on these things. Like they see ads, they assume they're being manipulated, and I think it's actually a deeper problem. And like when I use like DoorDash and I type in best Thai food, I have zero confidence that the first result is actually going to be what, the smartest algorithm at DoorDash thinks is the best Thai food. It is like
Right.
probably some merchant that like is paying a higher take rate, and like I'm being manipulated, you know, everywhere I'm buying things. And I think we wanted to, do everything we can to make Perplexity feel like a safe space.
As Perplexity inevitably gains the massive consumer scale and attention share, obviously it becomes like marketers will want and need to find better ways to actually capture value from the channel. And how does your role with them evolve, right? Like I think packaging some kind of perks into the subscription makes sense. It's hard to scale that infinitely. Obviously, there's an affiliate like structure perhaps as you get deeper into kind of commerce, but if you're not going to go in ads, how can marketers actually capture more value on the platform? How do you guys intend to work with brands and marketers?
I don't know if we need to work with everyone, right? I think like I think part of how we stand out and be differentiated is kind of, we really like the way we beat Google and other kind of legacy incumbents is not by trying to rebuild a margin structure that is as high as Google's is, right? Like I don't that's not how you're going to win, right? It's like, ultimately we need to create consumer surplus and capture, consumers just, the way we've grown is that people love using Perplexity, and we just need to kind of, stay true to that. And so it's an unpopular thing to say, but like I often get asked like, oh, like what's the SEO equivalent in AI? And people have been throwing around AEO and like, trying to like, get the band back together again and be like, oh, that was a good run where we felt we had this like set of tactics to kind of, get free traffic. Uh, and I don't know, maybe I'm just like too simple-minded, but like I don't see a world in which you can have it both ways. If AEO is a thing, it means Perplexity's answers aren't trustworthy. Because it means somebody can go in and artificially manipulate the answer. And if our answers can be improved, we should be proactively doing that ourselves by improving our index, our ranking, right? That's not like, that's on us. We don't need anyone, to assist in that task. Because obviously they don't share the same objective as we do. Uh, and so the the constructive answer I give people, though, which I think can sound glib, but I think is actually deep, is just build the best product, right? Because ultimately what we look at is what are like trusted reviewers saying about this brand or company or this merchant. Like that is the input, right? It's like, it's actual people, what their experience is with the product. That's what drives the ranking and the answers. And so I tell brands, like, I think earned media and high quality PR, and customer engagement, where your customers are so diehard that they want to tell the world about how great your products are. That's going to matter. That's going to be the base of an AEO strategy, not kind of keyword hijinks.
Yeah, I guess it is helpful for brands to know though which sources you uh, like. I think there's a inefficiency still where like as we all know, great products do not necessarily get great distribution organically, right? And so as marketers in today's era are responsible for helping great products get great distribution, it is probably helpful to know which sources get better rankings from, or, are weighted more heavily from Perplexity than the others, right? And so I guess that's like a sliver of what you might call the AEO practice. But I guess are you disagreeing that that is a valuable kind of area for marketers to be spending time on?
It's not I agree, disagree. I don't
Yep.
see a world in which us being transparent about how our system works, uh, not leading to gamification that then erodes the thing that we're optimizing, right? I mean, it's kind of similar to how in AI, like the most useful evals are the ones that are private and unpublished, right? Like that's why we have our own benchmarks for when new foundation models come out, and the only thing that makes them useful is they've never been publicly disclosed, and so nobody can kind of overfit against them, and so we're that's kind of invaluable in our ability to kind of independently assess what's going to be good or not good for users. And so I think that the transparency on the algorithm uh, is yeah. I don't see a way in which opening it up doesn't lead to gamification.
Yeah, that makes a bunch of sense. I'm curious when you think about now that Comet has been released, and people are not only going to get answers and follow-up questions in the Perplexity app, but they're now going to have it assisted through the browser. How do you think about the ways in which you're able to provide the best answer that has a browser style interface, especially in the context of shopping, relative to the direct in Perplexity chat style interface? An illustrative way for me to describe this would be, hey, when I book a flight ticket, I innately have more trust when I book it on United.com than any other third party site, right? And so maybe the browser interface has an advantage in that context because I can actually show you, hey, I am pulling up the brand's website and the transaction will happen there if you want to transact. And therefore, it is a higher trust mechanism of information display, right? I guess, like, how do you think about how these two interfaces play with each other? Where will certain types of consumer engagements have more value in sort of, your guys' North Star of the best possible answer for the consumer?
The new behavior that I expect, and we're already seeing the data, that's going to be really popular with Comet is the sidecar assistant. So just the ability to, when you're on a certain website, just be able to, ask questions with the context of that site kind of loaded up, right? And I think particularly in a commerce scenario of like, and again, like merchants don't necessarily, they won't love these behaviors, but they're super great for users. Like, hey, is this cheaper somewhere else? Or like, what are like the other review sites say about this product, right? Like, those are the things that are like incredibly like just to have it right there. You don't have to like copy paste. You don't have to like, it's just that's the behavior that I think is going to be really popular and kind of a new modality. I actually think like using all the personal context, your browser history, all that. Like, I don't think we even want people to like have to think too deeply about it. Like, it's like you just get a better answer, right? It should just feel like a more useful answer. Obviously it's transparent, like all the steps that were taken and the sources that were looked at, and the agentic queries where like you're going and like saying like, hey, go buy this for me, and because we're already logged in, we can take those actions, or like go add these guys on LinkedIn. That will I use that stuff, but I think it's gonna take us some time to educate kind of the kind of mainstream browser user to kind of expect that they can take these actions, and so I think that will take a little bit more time.
Maybe let's make this more tangible. So if I'm browsing for best running shoes for flat feet, in a Comet scenario versus outside of Comet, how might that experience look different?
Yeah, so I'd say the primary one would be we would be able to say you're logged in to X on that in that browser instance. We'd be able to see what running influencers you follow, right? And so we'd be able to pull in their recommendations. We'd be able to see like, have you gone to a specific brand website recently and like taken a lot of actions there, and that can be a signal that you have a preference for that brand, right? We can talk about your Amazon order history, so you just get a lot more context loaded into the prompt that is useful in nudging the answer to a way that's more constructive, and then you can obviously you now can direct a transaction. And again, this is why we never were kind of with kind of the seamless checkout. Like, we're agnostic as to whether the checkout happens, on our rails or merchants' rails. We just want it to be easy and seamless for the user, right? And so, if we know that you're logged into a certain website, you already have payment credentials, that can be part of like the follow-up prompt of like, hey, do you want to just go and buy it there? We can do that for you.
Yeah, it's interesting. It raises a second order question. Like if the browser itself starts interpreting intent and curating results, like how might that reshape the signals that marketers rely on today? Maybe this is a thing for Rishabh as well here. Like I'm just thinking of the second order effects if you continue to play a deeper role in these funnels. So,
Yeah, what is it that you would recommend to a merchant in that context when like Comet as an agentic browser is like taking various actions across various pages and various sites, and Macy's comes to your team and is like, hey guys, like what's the best way for us to think about how we show up and for us to think about all of the signals from like the Comet agent coming to our site? Like what are you recommending to them?
The fail case is where merchants approach us with like a fear paradigm of like, oh my gosh, like all this like incredible like infra and all these funnels and flows, like, you know, uh, it's not going to be as effective or relevant in this new paradigm. And so like kind of it's almost like a wishing this isn't going to happen. And so I think that's a fail case, because I think ultimately like the consumer wins, meaning like wherever creates more value for consumers, that's going to be the interface that they're going to go with. A colleague of mine, he talks about the era we're in now is like browser war, 3. So we kind of had browser war 1 was Internet Explorer versus Netscape Navigator. Number 2 was Internet Explorer versus Chrome, and now we have the AI browsers. And I think it's you want to be the first to like, really lean in and invite the behavior, right? If this is going to be the thing that people shift to, and their first, 100 really good e-commerce experiences are with your website, that's going to create a lot of stickiness down the road, right? And I think, where we see a interesting surface area is in the sidecar assistant. We do want to let domain owners be able to suggest what the queries should be when you're on their website. Potentially let them trigger the sidecar assistant with like a preloaded answer when it's useful to the user, and kind of bring in that independent context as an overlay on their web experience. And yeah, it's kind of, I think the resistance most merchants will have is ones that rely heavily on some type of, advertising as, part of their business model, because, they don't want, uh, agent eyeballs, they want human eyeballs, for those ads. And then I think the fear that you're not gonna be able to, because you're not controlling every part of the checkout, you're not gonna be able to, like, build up people's carts and kinda get them to add extra stuff, right? And so kind of, the average order value might go down. The right way to approach it is to, like, in the second bucket, like, you know, focus on just winning the space, right? And like that will there'll be new ways to, with proactive personalization, to actually like get even greater average order value where like, the AI is nudging you to, you don't even need to search for it. It's nudging you to make that purchase. And, for folks that are, wedded to display ads, uh I think that's going to be. I think that's just the agentic internet is going to have less of that, and that's. I don't think there's like a elegant solution. At least not one that I see.
I guess one thing I get most curious about in this world where you like think about, hey, in the old world you had signals about like you click this ad, you click this email, and that's like the old world of signals. Um, how would you recommend, hey, there is an agent who most consumers will use when interacting with your website. Here's like context and information you could make available to the agent that it can decide whether or not it retrieves on behalf of the consumer, but you now have a new surface, which is an agent who can consume way more information than a human. Is that something that you are asking or recommending? Or I guess like one side of a marketer's job is to take in signals from the outside, right? Of like, hey, here's how the consumer's acting. And then another side of it is how do I present information to be most digestible to my customer? And the customer in this case is an agent that is synthesizing the information on behalf of the end human. So does that side of the equation change potentially?
That's where I kind of come back to the, agents are AI agents are not emotional creatures. That's where it's like the personalized offer, discount, and exclusive. That will be the language that, that'll be the agent's love language, right? Because that is like something that can be computed, can be something calculated. And so I think that shifting to that model is going to be, I think, like the big paradigm shift. I think the other piece of this is like, if foundation models are real, like they're really good when you just like dump a lot in the context, and they will like figure it out. And where I think folks probably like burn a lot of unnecessary energy and actually lead to worse results is somehow like overthinking like, how you feed it into the context window, or like what like just put it on all in there, and it will like reason through, what's relevant, what's not to the initial user prompt. At least, we've orchestrated Perplexity to work that way. Uh, and I think kind of this, if you're basically trying to over engineer how you're trying to nudge the answer, you're actually going to make a worse answer.
I want to tie this and go back to your earlier point on building a great product. And, Perplexity there's a bunch of different signals that you kind of look at to determine whether a product is great and thus make the recommendation in a personalized way to the consumer. There's several commercial claims that brands might make about their product. And I think, in a world where brands actually have less control, perhaps there's an increasing value in the role of like a certification layer or more verifiable sources that kind of plug into Perplexity. And I'm just trying to understand, like, does there need to be like almost a nutrition label of sorts for marketing? Do you think product claims get more standardized? Do you guys have a point of view on that?
I mean, I think it fits into a more generalized framework of just domain authority. Like you can have, I mean, like I think if you create, I don't think it's fundamentally different than a new high quality publisher that does product reviews, right? Like I think it's a form of that. But I don't think we're gonna like, we live in a messy, uncertain world. Uh, and I don't think there's no one-shot solution to solving that. It's like aggregating a lot of diverse, high quality sources and synthesizing through it.
It's always been a marketer's dream to be able to do like personalized offers, like true one-to-one, and understand the real elasticity on like a user level and doing promotions that way. When you have to do kind of blanket discounts, that could be brand dilutive. It's kind of more of a complicated topic, but I also know there's kind of I believe there's legal issues that prohibit you from doing price discrimination in a certain way. If I kind of go a couple steps forward on this direction you're talking about, what do you guys anticipate running into there? And maybe I'm extrapolating too far on kind of doing one-to-one offers and discounts, but what are some of the conversations you're having around that?
I think of it almost like the anthropomorphized version of it is like you're at a bazaar and like you're negotiating with a merchant and like, except instead of you and the merchant, it's your agent that's an AI and the merchant's agent that's an AI. And it may get communicated as if it's a personalized offer, but what it really is like, a bid ask system between, and I think where it gets dynamic, and I think it kind of is on a different plane than some of the restrictions you mentioned, is like oftentimes it's not like a discount for one product, but it's like, hey, if you spend, you know, $200 with me over the next 3 months, like this is what I can get you, right? Or if you buy these three things, one of which like I'm trying to like offload my inventory of, right? So I think when it becomes really dynamic, and we're talking like this is not a 2 year thing, like this is like maybe like a decade out. And by the way, there's going to be all kinds of categories of consumer purchases where like we don't want we want to be in control, right? Like we don't want the AI deciding for us because it's fun to, like, I mean, again, like I think back to my wife, like she enjoys, like there are certain purchases we really like to make. It's something that like brings us happiness, and certainly like we'll use AI to like be more informed, but you're not going to like outsource the execution of the transaction to an AI.
Dmitry, one thing I can't help but feel when you say this, and I'm not sure how you would think about this, is I feel like the consumer side capabilities are going to go faster than the merchant side capabilities. So, like I can imagine someone like you or I using Comet capabilities at a level that is like far surpassed where the merchant could get to today. The like simplified version of this is like, hey, can you show me where this product is cheapest? And it can like look for all the retailers where that product is sold and quickly tell me which retailer is the best priced option. And like the merchant's infrastructure, I know does not allow for that today. Like the merchant does not know all of the different prices that its product is showing up at and all of the different retail partnership that it has at any point in time. And so there's this like very interesting dynamic that starts to happen. Um, and Perplexity is like solving for the consumer. Like, how do you think about, yeah, I guess, do you just see this as like, hey, these are like great opportunities for other startups to come in and start to like help the other sides of the market that get created when companies like Perplexity are creating so much advancement on the consumer side in this equation? Yeah, just help me think about how you think about that.
I mean, listen, merchants have really big IT teams. Like they're fully capable of like in some ways like they're the ones selling, so they have even more reason to get on top of this. And I think necessity is the mother of invention. Like I think when they see their older tactics not working because the consumer is super powered, I think they'll level up. You may have like a 6 month dislocation, but I think this will become. I think like the best merchants will rise to the occasion, just like the best brick and mortars like handled the transition to online. I think this is, I don't think this is like the best merchants always kind of handle these well.
Maybe in the last few minutes here, I'll shift gears and talk to you as a growth person. Like, you're responsible for growing Perplexity. You guys have been on a meteoric rise, of course, but there's a new paradigm for growth for these types of products in kind of this world. Maybe high level, like how does PLG look different in today's world, and maybe share some color on unique insights you've had in growing Perplexity.
Our growth has really, on the consumer side, been a function of people loving the product and telling other people about it. It's not like there hasn't, it, and the reality is in consumer internet, outside of social products, there have not been, that many like success stories, right? It's really hard. I mean, like, you know, I don't know if the gray hairs come through on the camera, but like this is like not an easy problem. And you have to like really, get creative. And obviously we're in a very competitive space, with a lot of moving pieces and, effectively all our competitors are either trillion-dollar companies or bankrolled by trillion-dollar companies. It's not easy, but like user love kind of, that's that without that, I don't think you can even like be relevant in the space, right? So I think kind of that's the foundation. I think on top of that, what we really focus on is execution speed. Because the foundation, like this is the analogy I use. I spent time at Uber during some of the hyper growth years there, and the AI space is kind of like you have all the competitiveness and intensity of the rideshare wars, except it's like GPS, the underlying technology is changing every 2 weeks, right? So you just have new foundational capabilities that come online, and it is you know, the part of our brand is, the user promise that whatever is the new thing in AI, the parts of it that can be useful to you will somehow be incorporated into the core Perplexity products, in real time. And then that generates, the coverage around like new features, changes, like it keeps you fresh, right? Keeps you in the news. We do a lot of partnerships, um, and with telcos and others, and there's as much benefit from the partnership itself as there is from the conversation around the partnership, right? And so I think like, and obviously you have like Luli running like the most extreme version of this playbook of just being generating attention by being controversial. Like that's not our brand. Like for us, like we want to generate attention by constantly shipping product. And so I think that is, if we were trying to reverse engineer how we've gotten to where we are. I think the user love and the execution speed have been pivotal. And I think we now have some really interesting plays with enterprise where pretty much every company we would want to sell into, there's already, probably 5 people at that company minimum that love Perplexity on the consumer side and probably use the consumer version for work too, and just don't tell their IT team. And so, that I think will be, like we have, I think 6,000 enterprises paying for Enterprise Pro. We have an enterprise team of 3 people. And so that's kind of, you're only able to do that because you have that motion of kind of inbound coming from your users.
Yeah, and maybe my last question, which is in the vein of advice for other founders, like you seem to be, how do you filter for velocity? I mean, you are in a very unique position where many companies, once they hit a certain scale, velocity starts to slow and just kind of laws of gravity set in and all of that. it seems that your team is only kind of picking up speed as you scale. How do you ensure that you have the right people on? How do you filter for that up front? And maybe how do you best enable them as they're kind of getting to scale?
I think it's certainly being radically transparent when you're like hiring people, that you know this is how we roll, and like this is like if people if I mean this will sound maybe like too serious, but if someone like mentions like work-life balance in like an interview and asks me about that, I'm like, okay, this is not going to work out. Because mostly just it reveals that someone hasn't done their homework on Perplexity, because we're very also like transparent about how we operate, and like if you haven't picked up on that's not a theme, then you're probably not it's there's bigger issues at play. So I think the radical transparency, accept the right expectations, like, and that way you kind of you're a magnet to the people that want that experience, and you're kind of deflecting the ones that don't. And then I mean, I'll give you like a tactical example. Like, I have like many direct reports, but I don't have a weekly one-on-one with any of them. And I don't do that. And many of them I meet one-on-one throughout the week, but I don't have a scheduled weekly one-on-one, because my greatest fear is that someone is going to wait 6 days to bring an issue to me, and we're going to have lost 6 days on solving that issue or executing against it, because that's when the weekly one-on-one is, and that's when they would have thought they would have had the opportunity to kind of make progress on it, right? And so like I you know I put incredible agency and trust on my team, with the great responsibility that if something's broken, if you're stuck, like, I'm not going to check in on you, but you better come to me, right? And that's, and kind of keeping a high accountability bar on that is that's been important for us. And then I think the last thing is being explicit about trade-offs. The whole point of priorities is that, you know, something is not a priority. And so like the thing I always, kind of my commitment to my team is like, come to me with what's on your plate, and I will always give you the stack rank, right? Like, and I will, and that's, by the way, that stack rank might change every 48 hours. And that's part of like, the radical transparency up front. As I say, like, if you want to, I'll kind of, another thing I find myself saying often is, I am highly confident, more than anything else, that 6 months from now, I am going to have myself a top 3 priority that today I have no idea what it is. And I have more conviction that I'm not going to know one of the top 3 than knowing what the other 2 are. Uh, and that's, you kind of need to like embrace that, and I think it's very localized to AI, but definitely even more localized to Perplexity. But that's kind of culturally how we execute.
Dmitry, this has been awesome. We've covered a lot of ground. Thanks so much for going deep on this with us. And yeah, it's been a great episode. So really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I think the world is ready for a new realm of how they interact with shopping, with marketing. Yeah, only exciting times ahead.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Great conversation. Really appreciate it.